Have you ever wondered why some people crumble under pressure while others seem untouchable, even in the face of chaos? The difference isn't luck, resources, or connections, it's mental fortitude. Look around you. We live in a world obsessed with external symbols of power: designer clothes, luxury cars, social media followers, corner offices. Yet beneath these hollow emblems of success, most people are mentally fragile. One harsh criticism shatters their confidence. One setback derails their momentum. One rejection makes them question their entire worth. Has this ever happened to you? That moment when an unexpected obstacle appeared and suddenly your mind became your greatest enemy instead of your most powerful ally. The truth is, most people have built their lives on foundations of sand. They've focused on acquiring everything except the one thing that truly matters: unshakable mental strength. Because here's what they don't teach you in school or in corporate training programs. The real battlefield isn't fought in boardrooms, marketplaces, or social arenas. It's fought inside your head, every single day. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share could completely transform how you navigate this world. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one with the most money, the highest title, or the most connections. It's the one with the most control over their own mind. The one who remains calm when others panic, focused when others get distracted, and decisive when others hesitate. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the globe. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Mental power is the ultimate weapon: silent, invisible, and devastatingly effective. Those who conquer the battles in their minds, who master their thoughts, silence their doubts, and harness their emotions, rule without needing a crown. They influence without needing authority. They command respect without demanding it. In this world, people fall into one of two categories: predators or prey. The strong control the weak. The disciplined control the impulsive. The calm control the chaotic. What you're about to discover might surprise you. The line between these two groups isn't drawn by circumstances, but by mindset. Here's the uncomfortable truth they never tell you. True control doesn't originate from external factors. It's born within. You can't command others if you haven't first mastered yourself. You can't influence the world if you're still a slave to your own impulses and emotions. You can't expect to win external battles when you're constantly losing the war within your own mind. The 7 ruthless lessons I'm about to share aren't feel-good platitudes about positive thinking or mindfulness. They're battlefield strategies for mental dominance. They're about control, power, and developing the kind of psychological strength that makes you impossible to manipulate, intimidate, or defeat. These principles have been used by history's greatest strategists, leaders, and conquerors, and today they'll become your arsenal. Let's start with a fundamental revelation that most people never grasp. True power begins in the mind, not in possessions or status. This hidden truth separates those who merely appear powerful from those who actually are. We're conditioned to worship the symbols of success: the mansion, the corner office, the social media following, but these are nothing but fragile illusions, castles built on sand. I've seen billionaires crumble under pressure, their wealth useless in the face of chaos, and I've witnessed individuals with nothing to their name command rooms through sheer mental presence. A person can accumulate all the wealth in the world, but if they lose composure when challenged, they're fundamentally powerless. Meanwhile, someone with empty pockets yet a disciplined mind, someone who remains calm, strategic, and in control, that person holds genuine power. This journey toward mental transformation begins with understanding a crucial principle: external control is meaningless without internal command. The ancient philosophers understood this balance perfectly. Fortune controls half of life's outcomes, but the other half belongs exclusively to the strength of your mind. The decisions you make, the perceptions you form, the meaning you assign to events. A powerful mind can literally bend reality, turning devastating failure into opportunity, transforming pain into discipline and growth. A weak mind collapses under that same weight. The difference isn't in the situation itself, it's in how you perceive it, how you process it, and how you respond to it. Think about the last major setback you faced. Was it the circumstance that determined the outcome? Or was it your response to it? The impact of any event in your life is shaped more by your interpretation than by the event itself. When you finally control thought and emotion instead of being controlled by them, circumstances no longer dictate your path. This is where real power begins to take shape, when you no longer depend on outside validation to define your worth. When criticism bounces off you instead of penetrating your core. When rejection becomes merely information rather than identity. The mindset shift happens when you remain calm while everyone around you panics, when you stay confident while others drown in doubt, when you maintain focus while the masses crumble into distraction. That's when you become truly dangerous, not in a destructive sense, but in your capacity to influence outcomes regardless of external factors. If you're ready to transform your mind into a weapon of strategic thinking and mental mastery, hit that subscribe button now. I'm creating content specifically designed for those who understand that true power begins within. Rule yourself first, because every empire begins within. Every great achievement, every meaningful impact on the world started as a thought disciplined enough to withstand opposition. The internal battle always precedes the external victory. Master your mind, and the world becomes malleable. Now, I want to go even deeper into this concept by examining how emotional mastery becomes your greatest weapon in a world ruled by impulse and reaction. Drop in the comments, "My mind is my empire," if you're ready to build your internal kingdom before seeking external conquests. Because once you understand how to detach from emotional storms while others are swept away by them, you gain an advantage few will ever possess. The stark reality is this: a strong mind bends the world to its will, while a weak mind bends under the world's weight. This transformation begins when your thoughts finally obey you rather than control you. When fear shifts from being a chain that holds you back to a signal that informs your decisions. When pain transforms from a source of defeat into fuel for your journey forward. At this level of mental mastery, you ascend to a place most people can never reach. The veil lifts, and suddenly you see through social illusions that trap others. Your actions gain precision because they're no longer clouded by emotional chaos. The most profound revelation comes when you stop being controlled by outcomes and realize that true control lies solely in your response to events. This brings us to perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of mental power: emotional detachment. Most people operate at the mercy of their emotions, not realizing this creates their greatest vulnerability. Think about it. Emotions are incredibly powerful forces, but when they control you instead of you controlling them, they destroy your clarity, your strategy, your effectiveness. Behind the scenes of almost every poor decision is the same culprit: emotional impulsiveness. This is the true weakness of most people, not ignorance, not lack of information, but the inability to pause between feeling and action. Watch how people around you react instantly to anger, jealousy, or fear, unknowingly exposing their intentions and motivations before they even understand the game being played. The wisest among us have always known this secret. True power comes from using both love and fear as tools, without being consumed by either. They understand the psychology of influence without becoming enslaved to the emotions that drive it. Let me clear up a common misconception. Emotional detachment doesn't mean becoming cold or heartless. That's actually a sign of weakness, not strength. True detachment means remaining in complete command of yourself. When you're properly detached, you still feel everything deeply, perhaps even more intensely than others. But you act deliberately rather than reactively. You don't let anger rush you into decisions you'll regret. You don't allow disappointment to paralyze your progress. You don't permit rejection to define your worth. Instead, you develop the remarkable ability to observe emotions as they arise within you, acknowledge their message, and then consciously decide how or whether to use them. A detached mind cuts through situations with razor sharpness precisely because it's never clouded by emotional fog. While others are blinded by their reactions, you maintain perfect vision. This clarity becomes your hidden advantage in every interaction, every negotiation, every conflict you encounter. The revelation that changes everything is learning to feel the emotion without becoming the emotion, to experience anger without transforming into anger itself, to notice fear without becoming fear personified. Let me know if you've started practicing emotional detachment by commenting, "I feel everything, I control everything," if you're learning to observe your emotions without being controlled by them. This subtle distinction marks the boundary between those who master life and those who are mastered by it. There's a profound psychological advantage that comes with emotional detachment. When people can't read your emotional state, they become uncertain, cautious, and ultimately powerless in your presence. Have you ever noticed how leaders who wear their emotions too visibly actually invite manipulation? It's one of the hidden truths of human dynamics. When others can clearly see what provokes you, what excites you, what disturbs you, they inevitably use those triggers against you. But when they can't read you, when your calm exterior masks both your strength and your strategy, something fascinating happens. They become uncertain about how to approach you. They hesitate before challenging you. Your emotional concealment creates a psychological dominance that can't be taught in business schools or leadership seminars. It must be cultivated through inner discipline. The real breakthrough in your personal transformation occurs when you learn to alchemize negative experiences. Most people are crushed by pain, rejection, or betrayal. But those on the path to mental mastery have discovered a revolutionary approach. They turn pain into valuable information, rejection into meaningful data, and betrayal into profound insight. This emotional alchemy doesn't minimize your experiences. Instead, it extracts wisdom from them. Every emotional storm becomes fuel for greater understanding. Every setback contains lessons that propel you forward. The fundamental shift happens when you stop asking the victim's question, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking the strategist's question, "What does this teach me about myself, others, and the world?" That shift is pure power. It transforms suffering into evolution. It converts what would destroy others into what builds you. To detach is not to disconnect. It's to protect your inner kingdom from invasion. It's establishing emotional sovereignty in a world that constantly attempts to colonize your mind with chaos. Remember this revelation. The calm mind always wins. When your mind becomes still, your body naturally follows, and your soul regains its balance. You begin moving through life like a chess master, unpredictable, patient, and impossible to provoke. You develop the rare ability to respond rather than react, to calculate rather than chaos. Ancient wisdom still holds true. The one who controls their passions controls their destiny. When your emotions finally obey your reason instead of overwhelming it, your decisions become virtually unbreakable. They're rooted not in temporary feelings, but in lasting principles. The journey toward emotional mastery leads to another crucial element of mental power: breaking free from society's most invisible chain, the addiction to approval. If you've experienced the power of emotional detachment in your own life, type "I am the calm in the storm" in the comments below. Most people never realize how thoroughly their need for validation controls their every move, their every word, even their identity itself. Let's unveil one of the most powerful revelations on your journey to mental sovereignty. The hunger for validation is the invisible chain that keeps potentially powerful minds enslaved. Take a moment to observe the people around you. Most live their entire lives chasing acceptance from family, friends, colleagues, society, even complete strangers through screens. They've been conditioned to measure their worth through the currency of opinions, likes, and applause. But here's the breakthrough insight. Every time you seek approval, you're unconsciously handing over the keys to your emotional kingdom. You're surrendering control of your inner state to forces entirely outside yourself. This silent transaction happens millions of times throughout a lifetime, often without awareness. The psychological architecture behind this pattern reveals something even more profound. When your self-image relies on external validation, you become dangerously predictable and astonishingly easy to manipulate. History shows us that individuals who depend on others for their sense of honor or worth never achieve true authority, regardless of their titles or possessions. This creates a fundamental divide in how people navigate the world. The approval seeker constantly bends and reshapes their character to fit others' expectations, like water conforming to whatever container holds it. But the mentally powerful individual does something revolutionary. They shape expectations around their authentic character. They don't ask permission to be who they are, to achieve genuine mental sovereignty, to become what some might call mentally dangerous. You must break free from the addiction of being liked. This may be the hardest withdrawal process you'll ever experience, but also the most liberating. Here's a revelation that might shift your entire perspective. Approval itself is actually a sophisticated form of control. People praise you when you serve their interests and reject you when you begin serving your own. This transactional dynamic underpins much of human interaction, yet remains largely unexamined by those caught in its web. The transformation begins when you no longer need others' validation to feel complete. Suddenly, you become immune to their manipulation. Attempts. Your decisions emerge from internal conviction rather than external pressure. You stop living to please and start living to command your own destiny. This journey reveals another counterintuitive truth. Respect isn't granted through begging or charm. It's established through strength, certainty, and consistency. When you stand firmly in your authentic self, without apology, people respond differently to your presence. They may not always agree with you, but they'll feel your solidity. Join our growing community of strategic thinkers by hitting subscribe. Every video I create is designed to give you another mental advantage that most people will never discover. The liberation from approval seeking naturally leads us to perhaps the most fundamental mindset distinction in human psychology. The difference between those who move through life as predators versus those who move through life as prey. If you've felt the weight of seeking others' approval and are ready for liberation, comment below, "I approve of myself first." This transformation begins when you make a revolutionary decision to act according to principle rather than popularity. It's a profound shift that few people ever make. When your decisions emerge from your core values, instead of fear of judgment, you begin actively shaping your destiny rather than having it shaped by others' expectations. Study the trajectory of any truly influential figure throughout history, and you'll discover this pattern. Every great ruler was criticized before they were praised. Every innovator was mocked before they were admired. Every mentally powerful person was misunderstood before they were respected. Their breakthrough came not from avoiding criticism, but from transcending its influence on their actions. The deepest revelation in this journey is understanding how thoroughly your internal sense of self-worth transforms your external impact. When you detach from the desperate need to be seen as good by others, you can focus instead on being effective. This shift is subtle but revolutionary. The world ultimately respects results, not intentions or feelings. The person who no longer craves applause develops a psychological fortress that no insult can penetrate. Words that would once wound now simply inform. Rejection that would once devastate now merely redirects. When your self-worth becomes truly internal rather than externally derived, your actions become virtually unstoppable because they're no longer constrained by the invisible prison of others' opinions. Now let's explore a powerful framework that will completely transform how you navigate every human interaction. In every arena of life, business, relationships, social dynamics, there exist only two fundamental mental types, the predator and the prey. This isn't about aggression or harm. It's about psychological positioning and awareness. The predator moves through life with three distinct qualities: unwavering focus, strategic patience, and methodical calculation. The prey operates from an entirely different foundation: hesitation before opportunity, reaction rather than initiative, and fear-based decision-making. Here's the crucial insight that most miss. The difference between these two mindsets isn't determined by physical strength, intellectual capacity, or resources. It's purely psychological, a choice in how you process and respond to the world around you. The ancient strategists understood this perfectly when they advised that a wise leader must learn to fight with both the lion's strength and the fox's cunning, embodying different aspects of power as circumstances demand. This binary distinction may seem simplistic at first glance, but its application reveals layers of nuance in understanding human behavior, strategic thinking, and the architecture of influence itself. If this mindset shift resonates with you, comment below. I choose predator consciousness to declare your commitment to moving with intention rather than reaction. The true predator embodies a fascinating duality, both courage and strategy in perfect balance. Unlike the cartoonish portrayal in popular culture, the authentic predator mindset operates with subtle sophistication. They observe silently before others even notice their presence. They study movements and patterns when others merely see random behavior. And perhaps most importantly, they strike only when the outcome is virtually certain. Meanwhile, examine how the prey mentality manifests in daily life. It wastes precious energy on three primary drains: panicking about possibilities that may never materialize, hoping for conditions to change without taking action, and overthinking decisions until opportunities vanish. This profound contrast in energy management alone explains much of the disparity in results between these two mindsets. Those with the predator consciousness understand something that transforms their entire decision-making framework. They don't chase approval or rush into emotional reactions. This mental discipline allows them to play the long game when others demand immediate gratification. They intuitively grasp that timing itself is a form of power, perhaps the most overlooked dimension of personal effectiveness in our instant results culture. To undergo this mindset transformation yourself, you must first eliminate what experienced strategists identify as the predator's true poison: hesitation. The psychological revelation here is that the longer you think before acting on a plan you've already formulated, the more your confidence gradually dissolves. Each moment of unnecessary delay erodes your certainty and weakens your eventual action. But here's the crucial distinction that separates masters from amateurs. Calculated silence is fundamentally different from hesitation. One comes from weakness, the other from strength. True silence is observation with purpose, You watch not because you're afraid, but because you're gathering intelligence to predict outcomes with greater accuracy. You move not because external forces push you, but because you've identified and chosen the perfect moment for maximum impact. This mindset embodies a truth that reshapes your entire relationship with opportunity. The world ultimately belongs to those who claim it, not to those who merely hope for it. Those waiting for permission to act will forever live under the authority of those who simply act. This isn't arrogance, it's clarity about how human systems actually function beneath their polite surfaces. The predator mindset isn't about aggression or domination, it's about heightened awareness. It means developing the ability to see through layers of deception that confuse others. It means anticipating moves while others are still processing what just happened. It means maintaining emotional invisibility when others broadcast their intentions through uncontrolled reactions. If you recognize moments where hesitation has cost you opportunities, comment, "I move with certainty," to mark your commitment to decisive action. Consider the fundamental difference in how these two mindsets approach every situation. The prey plays checkers, while the predator plays chess. This isn't just a clever metaphor, it reveals a profound truth about strategic thinking. The predator has developed the rare ability to accurately assess who's weak, who's fake, who's useful, and who represents a genuine threat in any environment. Nothing is personal. Everything is information. The mentally dangerous individual builds their environment strategically, not emotionally. This distinction transforms every interaction. Every response has intent. Every silence is calculated. Every smile serves a purpose. The revelation that changes everything is realizing that survival in our complex social landscape isn't about being liked. It's about being aware. History repeatedly confirms that the one who deceives will always find someone who lets themselves be deceived. The question becomes, which side of that equation will you occupy? This brings us to perhaps the most powerful mental weapon in your arsenal, psychological disguise. The truly dangerous mind, the one that others can never anticipate or manipulate, is the one that hides its truth behind a carefully constructed mask. This isn't about dishonesty, it's about strategic advantage. Power thrives in the twin domains of silence and confusion. The moment others can accurately predict your thoughts, you've already lost your advantage. Throughout history, the most effective leaders understood this principle. They must appear virtuous while acting according to necessity. In practical terms, this means showing people exactly what they expect to see while keeping your actual motives and strategies concealed. This creates a psychological blind spot in others that you can navigate through with remarkable freedom. Many misinterpret this concept as manipulation or deceit, but that perspective misses the deeper truth. Psychological disguise isn't primarily about deceiving others. It's about protecting yourself. It's the sophisticated art of revealing nothing while observing everything. This asymmetry of information creates an insurmountable advantage in every domain of life. Notice the revealing contrast in how different minds approach visibility. Weak minds desperately crave to be understood, often over-explaining themselves and their motives. Powerful minds make the opposite choice. They deliberately remain unreadable. The psychology behind this choice reveals a fundamental understanding of human nature. When you allow others to see your emotions clearly, you're inadvertently teaching them precisely which buttons to push to manipulate you. Similarly, when you openly share your ambitions, you're providing a detailed map of exactly how others can block your path. The concealed mind, the one that remains an unsolvable mystery to others, creates a psychological advantage that cannot be countered because it cannot be seen. If you're ready to protect your true intentions while observing everything around you, comment, I reveal nothing, I see everything, to signify your commitment to psychological disguise. This revelation leads us to a counterintuitive truth that transforms how you view influence. Perception shapes power far more powerfully than truth itself. When you master psychological disguise, you gain the ability to shape how others react to you without ever revealing how you truly think. This creates an information asymmetry that cannot be overcome. Consider what happens in the mind of someone interacting with you when they cannot determine with certainty whether you're weak or strong, angry or calm, lost or in control. They hesitate. That momentary hesitation, that psychological pause, becomes your weapon. It creates space for you to maneuver while they're still processing. This is why psychological disguise naturally creates unpredictability, and unpredictability itself is a form of dominance in human dynamics. The practical implementation of this principle requires three fundamental shifts in how you communicate. Never explain too much, never react immediately, and never clarify every move. Each of these seemingly small adjustments creates an unknown element that keeps others perpetually guessing, and their constant guessing maintains your psychological superiority. The most effective influencers throughout history understood this principle intimately. The best manipulators are rarely the loud, obvious ones. They are silent architects of confusion. They plant thoughts so subtly that others believe they originated them. They shift narratives without drawing attention to the change. They disappear behind carefully crafted personas after setting events in motion. This is mental judo at its finest. Even when speaking complete truth, they instinctively mix it with just enough ambiguity to maintain their advantage. The ultimate revelation in this journey of transformation is this: the mind that cannot be read becomes the mind that cannot be defeated. This principle works because of a fundamental flaw in human perception. People almost universally believe what they see rather than what actually exists beneath the surface. This predictable blindness becomes your strategic advantage when applied consciously. Appear perfectly calm when you're internally plotting your next move. Appear temporarily broken when you're actively rebuilding your position. Appear completely harmless precisely when you're sharpening your blade. The consistent thread running through each scenario is complete control over what others perceive, regardless of what exists beneath. Your thoughts represent your true fortress. Once exposed, even the weakest enemy can walk directly through the gate. This understanding naturally leads us to perhaps the most sophisticated dimension of mental power, the cultivation of invisible influence that shapes outcomes without ever revealing its source. If you've recognized how predictability has made you vulnerable in the past, comment, "My mind is unreadable," to embrace the power of psychological disguise. The highest form of power is paradoxically the one no one can directly observe. Throughout history, the loudest, most visible leaders often fall first precisely because they make a critical error. They mistake visibility for actual control. The ancient wisdom tells us it's safer to be feared than loved, but the truly secure position transcends both emotions entirely. The most powerful presence is neither feared nor loved. It's simply felt. This invisible power manifests as influence without display, command without force, control without exposure. It's the psychological equivalent of gravity, unseen yet impossible to escape. You know you've achieved this rare form of mastery when your mere presence alters the behavior of others without you saying a single word. Watch how people instinctively adjust their posture, their tone, their words when you enter a room, not because you demanded it, but because your energy commanded it. The revelation that transforms your approach to influence is understanding that the truly strong never announce their strength. They simply allow others to sense it naturally. Only the weak feel compelled to constantly remind everyone of their power. The wise remain quiet, observing reactions, rather than demanding them. This pattern appears consistently across every domain of human achievement. To build this invisible power requires mastering the art of subtle manipulation, not through cruelty, but through calibration. You learn to influence perception instead of demanding obedience. The shift is profound. Rather than pushing against resistance, you simply redirect existing momentum. Rather than fighting against established patterns, you subtly reshape them through strategic positioning. The most effective way to guide thoughts isn't through direct argument, but through strategic positioning. History's most influential figures discovered a universal truth. Rulers must learn to act indirectly, because direct force inevitably provokes equal resistance. The invisible mind leads through presence rather than pressure. It attracts attention through mystery rather than noise. Here's the psychological insight that changes everything. The moment people can clearly define your authority, they can measure it. And whatever can be measured can eventually be challenged or overthrown. True power maintains an element of the undefined, the unmeasurable. It exists in the realm of feeling rather than fact. This revelation about invisible influence naturally connects to the most fundamental principle in the journey toward mental dominance. The understanding that all external mastery begins with internal mastery. Before attempting to control the world around you, you must first achieve complete sovereignty over the world within you. If you've experienced moments where your presence alone changed the dynamic in a room, comment, "I lead through presence, not pressure," to acknowledge your invisible power. There's a profound truth about power that history repeatedly confirms. Power that moves in silence can never be truly destroyed. Look at the pattern across civilizations. The unseen strategist consistently outlasts the visible ruler. There's a simple reason for this. Enduring principle. No one can attack or undermine what they cannot precisely locate. This insight should reshape your entire approach to influence. Your goal isn't to be known for wielding power. It's to influence decisions without appearing to be the source of that influence. The most sophisticated manifestation of this principle is when you learn to make others feel your absence even more intensely than your presence. This creates a fascinating psychological dynamic where your influence lingers in a room long after you've physically departed. When you walk away, your energy should still subtly guide conversations, decisions, and dynamics. You've transcended physical presence and entered the realm of psychological imprint. The transformation happens when others can sense your strength but cannot trace its exact source. This creates an instinctive response, a form of obedience that bypasses conscious resistance. True mental dominance never requires confrontation because it bends reality through calm command. The ancient wisdom observes that people generally judge more through sight than through touch, simply because everyone can see, but few can truly feel. Invisible power completely flips this established rule. You stop focusing on what you show and start emphasizing what you make others feel. You become a psychological shadow, unseen yet impossible to avoid. This journey brings us to the seventh and most foundational lesson. Before you attempt to control the world around you, you must completely conquer the storm that rages within you. Every person dreams of some form of dominance or influence, but very few ever realize that their greatest enemy isn't found in external competition. It's found within their own mind. The first and truly greatest victory you'll ever achieve isn't over a competitor, a market, or a challenge. It's over yourself. The revelation that changes everything is understanding that you cannot possibly command other people if you cannot first command your own impulses. You cannot effectively lead minds if you cannot lead your own emotions. You cannot direct others' focus if your own attention scatters with every distraction. The battle for external control is always preceded by the battle for internal discipline. If you've recognized that your greatest victories have always started with conquering yourself first, comment, "I master myself before mastering others," to acknowledge this fundamental truth. Self-mastery forms the foundation of every empire, whether we're talking about business dominance, social influence, or personal achievement. Look at the stark contrast between two types of individuals. The undisciplined person lives as a slave to their urges. Anger drives their decisions, greed determines their values, lust dictates their relationships, fear limits their actions, and pride blinds their judgment. Their internal landscape is perpetually in chaos. The disciplined individual, however, has undergone a profound transformation. They command these exact same forces not as masters, but as tools. The distinction is revolutionary. They feel emotion just as intensely, but they choose their action independently. They sense temptation with the same pull, but they decide the timing of their response. They acknowledge the chaos of life, but they build order within it. The revelation that changes everything is understanding that self-control isn't about suppressing natural instincts. It's about directing them with laser precision. There's a hidden truth behind every interaction you'll ever have. Every uncontrolled reaction leaks precious power, while every controlled response expands it. When your desires finally obey your intellect rather than the reverse, you become virtually unstoppable. The weak individual consistently blames the world for their condition. The strong one systematically rewires their reactions to that same world. Consider the compound effect of this principle over time. Every single instance where you successfully delay gratification, resist needless provocation, or maintain calm under direct insult, you're not just winning a momentary battle, you're actively sharpening your mental sword for greater challenges ahead. True leadership always begins with restraint, because power without discipline inevitably collapses under pressure. A pattern repeated throughout history at every scale, from personal relationships to empires. The journey towards self-mastery provides something invaluable in today's world of conformity: the psychological strength to stand completely alone when necessary. It gives you the rare ability to remain unmoved when the crowd sways emotionally in one direction. It allows you to think with perfect clarity precisely when collective fear blinds everyone around you. This internal sovereignty builds consistency over time, and that consistency inevitably builds credibility with others. Without this inner command, success in any domain becomes merely a function of luck, temporary, unpredictable, and ultimately undeserved. With it, success becomes something closer to inevitable, because you've aligned your actions with principles rather than with impulses. When you finally master your focus, something remarkable happens. The world around you becomes increasingly predictable, while you become increasingly adaptable. If you've experienced moments where your self-control created opportunities that impulsive reactions would have destroyed, and comment, "I command my impulses, they don't command me," to declare your commitment to self-mastery. This reveals another dimension of self-mastery that transforms your entire approach to challenges. The self-mastered individual can shift strategies completely without ever losing their central direction. The ancient wisdom articulates this perfectly. Whoever desires consistent success must learn to change their conduct with the shifting times. But here's the crucial revelation: effective adaptation requires internal control, because adaptation without stability is simply collapse disguised as flexibility. Watch how the self-mastered person moves through chaos with remarkable elegance. Their movements appear effortless precisely because their center remains unshakable, regardless of external turbulence. This singular quality ultimately separates the rulers from the ruled throughout history. the ability to remain perfectly calm while everything around them burns. This rare capacity creates a psychological advantage that cannot be matched by resources, connections, or even intelligence. The journey of transformation eventually reveals the importance of protecting your mind like an impenetrable fortress against emotional invasion. The walls of this psychological citadel consist of three elements: strategic silence, unwavering focus, and emotional detachment. When constructed properly, this mental architecture creates a fascinating effect. Insults that would once penetrate. Your defenses now simply bounce off your composure like rain against stone. Praise that would once inflate your ego now passes through without distorting your self-perception. The metamorphosis is complete when you stop being reactive to the world and start being selectively engaged with it. Building this mental fortress isn't about isolation, it's about protecting your most valuable resource, your psychological energy. Every interaction either strengthens or depletes this energy. The undisciplined mind allows constant emotional theft through needless reactions, while the disciplined mind guards its power source with vigilance. Through this journey of mental transformation, you gradually become a force that operates with three distinct qualities: quiet intensity rather than loud insecurity, subtle influence rather than obvious manipulation, and complete immunity to others' attempts to control you. Every insult that once wounded you deeply now passes like a gentle breeze against hardened steel. Every praise that once distracted you from your path now floats by without weight or substance. The revelation that changes everything is realizing that true influence no longer requires lengthy explanation or justification. Authentic authority no longer demands external recognition or validation. Your presence alone communicates what words cannot. Your decisions create ripples that extend far beyond your immediate circle. Your focus becomes untouchable because it's no longer dependent on external approval. If you've witnessed how your inner transformation has directly impacted your outer reality, comment, "Inner mastery creates outer dominance," to acknowledge this profound connection. The war for your mind is fought every single day, but here's the truth I want you to understand deeply, that war is already won inside before it ever manifests in the external world. Power doesn't begin with resources, connections, or titles. It begins within. Once you successfully command your thoughts, control your reactions, and master your identity, the external world naturally bends to accommodate your reality rather than the reverse. You transform from being merely a player in other people's games to becoming the architect of your own reality. This shift represents the essence of what we've explored together, turning your mind into a weapon through calm composure, invisible influence, and undeniable mental strength. This journey isn't complete with just this video. I've created this channel specifically for people like you who understand the profound impact of mental mastery. If you found value in these principles, join our community by subscribing. I'm building something different here, not just motivation, but actual mental strategies that create results. Let me know which of these 7 lessons resonated with you most deeply by commenting. Lesson 1: transformed my thinking with the number that impacted you. Your perspective matters to me, and I read every comment personally. If you felt that spark of recognition while watching, that moment where something clicked into place, leave a like. It's not just about supporting the video. It's about acknowledging that internal shift that happens when truth resonates with something you already knew intuitively. There's another dimension to this conversation waiting for you. I've created a video right here that reveals the hidden psychology behind why most people never achieve their potential and how you can break that pattern. Click there and continue this journey with me. The transformation has only just begun.